Speaking of Patty, first thoughts when you met Bob?
Oh, well, I was working for a wonderful woman who was a great mentor for me, Virginia Nauer, and she was a special assistant to the president for consumer affairs, and I was her deputy. And so we went to visit the chairman of the Republican National Committee to talk to him about a consumer plank in the platform for the convention that year, the Republican platform.
I think first time I saw her, I was chairman of the Republican Party, and she was working with Virginia Nauer, Consumer Office of Consumer Affairs, and they wanted to get it a plank in the Republican platform.
And he was not in his office. He was over on the Senate floor. But we were ushered into his office, and we sat there across from his desk and waited, and suddenly a side door opened. Bob Dole walked in. And I remember looking up at him and thinking, my goodness, he's an attractive man. I remember very clearly.
I think that's the first time I saw her, and I thought to myself, oh, this is not a bad little meeting we're having here, you know. And I remember writing her name down on my blotter, thinking, well, I might want to contact her later, but get more details, of course, about the program.
And he says that he wrote my name on the back of his blotter that day. But he was in the midst of not only his Senate activities, but as chairman of the party, he was traveling extensively. I think it was something like 500,000 miles all over. And so I didn't see him again for quite some time. And then I think there was the opening of the Republican headquarters in Washington. And he was there, and we said hello. And then at the convention in Miami, the Republican National Convention, we met up again, and we had a nice chat, okay? Maybe about, a couple of weeks later, he called. And we had this wonderful, probably 40-minute conversation. We had all these mutual friends, mutual interests, and then he said goodbye. That was it.
A lot of phone calls, you know, it was local, though, you know. Long distance, I probably wouldn't have called so often.
A little bit more time went by, he called, and this time we spoke for probably 30 minutes. Great conversation. And he said, maybe we could have dinner sometime. And I said, well, that sounds very nice. And he said goodbye. It was on the third call that he asked me out.
Well, I think, honestly, I'm probably a little shy, and I didn't know, you know, quite how to proceed there, but I figured it out. It took me a while, you know. After all, I'm a senator. I'm not too sharp.
But, you know, I look back and I thought, you know, he was a little shy, and I loved that. He was not some ladies' man chasing around to the city. He was somewhat shy, and I liked that. I thought that was neat. Well, I remember how
deserted me.
I remember how Bob built a little coalition of supporters when he was courting me. Remember?
I took all of Mrs. Hanford's friends to the country club for lunch to tell them what a nice guy I was. There were about 8 or 9 women. See if I could pass muster it, because you got to take all these tests. No written tests, but you know, you got to check it out with the neighbors, the minister, the used car dealer, and all those people. Finally, it worked out. Finally got enough votes. You need 2/3.
So he had a group of people. By the time the luncheon was over, they thought, my goodness, how could you possibly consider marrying anybody but Bob Dole?
I even weighed in with a little political influence. That Senator Helms called Mrs. Hanford. I think he, of course, he knew Mrs. Hanford, because he said when he first came to Salisbury, he always remembered her being there, and every time he'd come, she'd be there. And he did call, you know, put in the Helms housekeeping seal of approval for Bob Dole.